So, you want to start learning how to use Premiere Pro? Well, I'm going to show you how to get started. The very first thing that we're going to want to do is launch Premiere Pro. Easy enough, right? Now that Premiere Pro has launched, we have a couple options in front of us. We have a new project, an open project, and we have our recent projects, just in case you want to jump into right back to where you were editing before. But for this example, let's create a new project. So let's click on New Project. Now we have a new box that pops up that will give us a couple different options. If you're used to Adobe, this is pretty much just like saving a file on any other Adobe program. So let's name this example project and the date today, the 23rd. All right, so now we want to save in our location. How we're going to do that, we're going to go under Location, Browse. Now I have a project folder made that if you look here, you can copy, and I highly recommend you do to stay completely organized. So let's go to our Adobe PP for Premiere Pro, go into there, and just click Select Folder. All right, now we're pretty much good to go. One thing to take note of though, under video rendering and playback, you have this renderer option. Now, if your computer has a GPU on it, which most computers do, you're going to want to enable this. Now, when you do the dropdown, it says Mercury Playback Engine software only, or Mercury Playback Engine GPU acceleration. You're always going to want to have GPU acceleration selected. If you don't, you're just going to have a bad time. All right, now that that's done, let's click OK. All right, wonderful. We are now in the Editing tab, which if you're not in the Editing tab, which is these tabs along the top here, I want you to select it. Wonderful. Now, the very first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to create bins, which is going to help us stay organized the entire time. And again, organization is key. So, how do we create a bin? Easy. At the very bottom of our project tab that we're in, now you can see project tab, there's a little bar with a bunch of different options down here. The option that we're going to want to select is this little folder icon. Now sometimes if this is over too far, this is going to be hidden, which how to not get it unhidden, you just kind of be in this tab, go over here where you see that you can widen it, pull it over till it's revealed. Now, what I like to do is I like to make about 5 of these. So let's click our there, 2, 3, 4, 5. From there, I like to name them all. So we'll start off with our compositions, our footage, our assets, our sound effects, and our music. Wonderful. All right, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is create our sequence. So how do we do that? We've got a couple different options. We can go File, New, Sequence, and you're good to go. You can also do Command N if you're on Mac, or you can do Control N if you are on PC. But also, you can go down to the bottom here, right next to where the Create Bin tab was. There's a little New Item tab. You can click on that, click on Sequence. Wonderful. Now we got a ton of options here to select from, a ton of available presets, which is pretty much where you're going to want to live because you don't really got a lot of these are really all the same. So what I like to do for the quickest presets, I'll go down to Red R3D, we'll open that folder, find 1080p, because we're going to be working in a 1080p timeline. Just do that drop down. And typically you're always going to want to select the first one, 23.976. That is the universal frame rate that is used across the board for web and television. So let's just hang on this guy. Now we want to name our sequence, so let's just do example. And Shikaka, we have our sequence made. Now, again, we want to stay organized. Let's select our example, drag it to the comps folder, and then let's collapse this. All right. Now, at the same time, we also want to make a vertical timeline. So again, let's do it this way. Let's click on New Item, Sequence. Okay, so how we're going to do this, there's no really vertical preset, okay? But let's name our sequence name to vertical. We'll just vert. Now, what we're going to want to do, we're going to want to go to the top here while this is still selected. Click on Settings. Then we're going to want to navigate to Video, Frame Size, and we'll just do 1080 by 1920. And see, we got 9 by 16. Here's our vertical. Again, let's take that comp, drag it into comp. All right, we are all set to start getting our footage in and start editing. Now, how are we going to get our footage in? We have a couple different options. The very first option you can hit, if you're on a Mac, Command I, or if you're on Windows, Control I. And this brings up our import window. From here, you can just navigate to where you have your footage saved and just drag it in. Another option that you can do, you can open your folder already that's on your computer, navigate to where you have your footage saved, find it, and just drag it in, no problem. And boom, there you are, we're there. So again, now that our footage is in, let's get it organized. Let's drag it into our footage folder. All right, we have our footage in, and we want to get it into our timeline. What's the best way to do this? Is the best way to drag it in just from our project window? Absolutely not. You're going to have a bad time. You want to set what's called in and out points. So let's double click on our footage. From our footage, we have what's called a source window now. So this is pretty much all the raw stuff before it's going to go into your timeline here. Now we want to select our parameters on where we want to go in and out, where we want the footage to start and where we want the footage to end. We also have a couple options here on how to do this. The slowest way to do this, let's select our part where we want to go in on our little timeline here. So we want to go in here. We go down here on this little bar where the playhead is, and we want to go to this kind of open bracket where it says mark in. You can either click on that or you can just hit I on the keyboard for in. Now let's go to over here. This is where we want the clip to stop. You can go back down to here, and right across from that open bracket is a closed bracket called mark out. You either want to click on that or hit O on the keyboard. All right, we just selected where we want our footage to start and where we want it to stop, and we want to get it down into our sequence. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the clip itself in our source window. Just click on the whole thing, drag it down in. Now, if your clip source is a higher resolution than your sequence source, you're going to get this window, okay? It's going to say, does not match sequence settings, change sequence to match clip settings. No, we don't want to do this, okay? We want to go to keep existing settings. So let's just click on that, and bada boom, bada bing. Again, because our footage is a lot bigger than our timeline, when we drag it in, it's going to look like it doesn't fit, and it's super easy to change. So we're just going to highlight our clip, go up to our effects control box, click on that, find scale, and we're just going to scale it down. Looks good to me. Absolutely perfect. Now let's go back to our source window, where you can just double click on the footage to get back into it. Say we have this clip and everything looks good, but we only want the video and not the video and audio. So super easy to do. Right above the clip head here, you have a little film strip icon and you have a little audio wave icon. Just click on the film strip icon, boom, you have just the video. Now you just want the audio right next to it, click the little waveform file or icon, click on that, drag it down in, bada boom, bada bing, you are good to go. All right, so let's open our vertical timeline. Now let's take our footage, again, we got it right here, just drag it on in. Now, because it's vertical, the opposite way, it might fit a little bit better, but we still want to go into our effects control and scale it to where it's going to scale perfectly. So it's not center frame. How we want to do that? Well, right above scale, we have position. From position, we'll just move this over a little bit to the right, and boom, we are good to go. But for this example, let's continue in our 1080p timeline. All right, so let's say you have all your clips lined out now and your video's done and you want to get it rendered out to put on YouTube or whatever. Well, we got a couple different options as well. So we want to make sure that our timeline down here is selected, and you'll see it underlined right there, and just make sure that little tile is good to go there. We are going to go to File, Export, Media, or if you're on a Mac, hit Command M, or if you're on Windows, hit Control M. Now once you do that, you're going to have this little dialog box that comes up with a ton of settings that make no sense. Well, the best way to do this, to render out, to get it out to web, is first of all, we want to go to our export settings, format. We want to make sure there's a ton of different formats to choose from, but for this purpose, we want to choose H.264. This is the most universal kind of a format there is right now with video. So make sure we have our export video and export audio selected. Now, below that, we have our effects, video, audio, multiplexer, captions, and publish. We want to make sure we're on the video tab. So all this looks good. This is going to be preset as it is already. Now we want to enable render at maximum depth. Now we want to go down a little bit more. That's all good. That's all good. Now, bitrate settings is where we want to mess with, and you're going to want to mess with it every single time. We have our target bit depth, bitrate, and our maximum bitrate. The lower the number is, the more compressed the video is, and the more artifacting there will be. So, typically with 1080 video, you want to have your target bitrate as 20, your maximum bitrate 5 above that, 25. And whenever you're starting to mess with 4K video, it changes. 4K is usually around 45 for your target bitrate, and your maximum is about 50. But that's for a different time. All right, now that that's done, we want to use maximum render quality. Now, we want to save it in a select spot. Now, how do we save this? Well, we have our output name right here. We're just going to click output name. Find the folder you want to save it to. I'll do example projects, Adobe ME. It typically stands for Media Encoder, which is where I save all my renders. Go into there. We will make a folder called example. And within this folder, down here, we have our file name, example v1. Always do a v1 and add numerically to whatever the next version will be so you don't get lost. Click save. Now we are good to go. We are good to render. So if you hit Q, it is going to open Media Encoder and render from there. But since this is something quick, we'll just click on export right away. Now, exporting will go, as you see, and when it's done, it will save into that folder. Other than that, you are absolutely 100% good to go, and this is the very, very, very basics of Premiere Pro. But before I end this, I totally forgot that I said I was going to show you how to add effects, and I'm about to do that right now. Over on the left tab over here, we have our effects panel. Sometimes this might be up over here or up over here, but I have mine set so it's down here. So we have a couple of different options. We got our effects and transitions. Now let's just add a transition on. So let's open it up. And we have a ton of different options, okay? For this example, I'm going to use the red giant universe transition, so we'll open this up. Now, we have a ton of different options here. For this one, I'm going to use the glitch transition. So we'll click on that, and we have the options of dragging it at the end or dragging it at the beginning. So let's just drag it at the end. Wonderful. And there we go. And as you can see, the effect is applied. Now say we want to change something about the effect. You click on the effect in the timeline on the clip there, and in your effects controls panel, you're going to have all these different options. Now say you want to change this one. Now for this specific one, how we're going to change it, we're going to go choose a preset, and it's going to open a red giant dialog box. And from there, we can just look at all the different presets, and whichever one we like, just click apply, and it will reflect immediately down in your timeline. Other than that, that is the most basics of Premiere, and I hope you learned something. All right, I'll catch you next time.